Roll video.
One of the main challenges that most school districts have is budget, dollars. 85% of your general fund dollars go to salaries.
The taxpayers in our district haven't supported a bond in over 30 years, so we're on our own.
I've had a 40% reduction in my workforce in 10 years due to budget cuts from the federal and state government, so we've had to become more efficient in how we maintain.
We're finding, our buildings are separating, our roofs are deteriorating, our HVAC systems are antiquated.
We've moved away from stemming crises. Instead, we're now looking at what are the outcomes.
Well, the big challenges that all of us throughout the country face is reimbursement. Medicare and Medicaid do not pay us to match our cost.
We get measured by CMS, we get measured by the Joint Commission, we have, the state comes in.
We don't have a lot of control over what the utilities charge us today, but what we do have control over is the amount of energy that we're using.
Sustainability is one of our key strategies. We believe it's the right thing to do.
Big challenge is, as you continue to save energy and move forward, how do you get more?
We're on our own.
Budget, dollars.
We don't have a lot of control.
What are the outcomes?
So we've had to become more efficient.
Big challenges.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the 24th Annual Energy Efficiency Forum. Not only are we here today in Washington, D.C., but we have close to 800 participants joining us through WebEx. So a discussion on technology, also implementing technology to expedite the discussion in over 50 countries around the world. So we're very excited that you've joined us, and I think we have a great session for you planned today. I'm Laura Farnham. I'm responsible for the Building Technology and Services group at Johnson Controls, and I'm joined by some esteemed colleagues I'll be introducing you to in just a moment. But with so many people of diverse backgrounds joining us for this discussion, I wanted just to take a minute to set some context. You heard in the video about different challenges that facility directors, facility managers, building owners are facing today. But I wanted to step back for a minute and say, as professionals, we all come to work every day to achieve things, right? To make progress, to serve our customers, serve our constituents. And it doesn't matter if it's a hospital, it's all about improving patient care. Or in a school, it's all about improving the quality of education. Or in a factory, maybe it's worker productivity. What goes on in those buildings is really why we are there to serve them every day. But managing those buildings has a set of challenges, as you heard in the video, and you'll hear throughout our session today. As in any role, we ask our building managers to get more with less money, do more with less, extend the life of building systems, of equipment, improve ROIs, reduce energy consumption at the very same time that energy demand is increasing. And so what we've put together for you today are, from our panelists, an opportunity to say, how are they handling these things? And I think as you listen to their stories, the word hero kind of comes to mind of how can you possibly address all of these challenges. And as we think about buildings, they're complicated. And being with Johnson Controls, we don't always like to admit that, right? But buildings are complicated. Until you really start to understand them, you can't appreciate exactly how complicated they are. But even a single building, you worry about temperature, humidity, lighting, airflow, all kinds of activities there. And then you compound that by saying, now we're not just going to worry about one building. That would be kind of a luxury. But most of our clients have multiple buildings. They're campuses, or they're cities or municipalities, or they're global enterprises. And now all of those buildings are comprised of different systems, different generations of systems, different technologies. And so all of those challenges around do more with less and save energy are really exponentially increased because you're trying to solve a problem with so many different puzzle pieces. So at Johnson Controls, we really look to ways to apply technology to our products and services to partner with our clients to help them simplify this complex puzzle that they deal with every day. And no one better to share some stories with you. Let's just move right along to our panelists. Just a comment on format. We're going to have each of our panelists do an introduction, talk a little bit about the objectives they hope to achieve in their business and some of the challenges that they face. I'll facilitate a Q&A, but then we will save time at the end to take questions from the room as well as our online participants. Okay? So let me introduce Tom Ringham from Wishard Memorial Hospital. Tom?
Good afternoon. I am Associate Vice President of Facilities for a community hospital in Indianapolis. We're about a 300-bed hospital currently, about 1.7 million square feet. But the reason I'm sitting up here is we're in the process of replacing our current campus with a new hospital campus of about 1.2 million square feet and about a $754 million budget. We began the design process about 7.5 years ago, at a time where all technology was basically running on wires because we didn't trust a wireless environment. We are winding up with a building built with an extremely robust and complete wireless system, and $7.1 million worth of blue cable running around the building that we probably don't need all of it now. But that's the kind of change that's occurred in that 7.5 years. All of those lead-ins at the video at the beginning sounded awful familiar to all the problems that we have. I still have operations responsibility for our existing campus. We have a staff of 64. When I started with Wishard 12 years ago, we had a staff of 112. We're doing a lot more with a lot less. So those are the challenges that we continue to face. Obviously, right now, my objective is to get our first patient in our new building in December. And we are well on the way to do that. With the help, quite frankly, of Johnson Controls. They are our systems integrator and are really helping us through that entire process. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And Mark Peterson from the University of Minnesota.
Hi, my name is Mark Peterson with the University of Minnesota. I am a senior controls engineer and I work for the energy management department. And our story really began about the turn of the century, back in 2000. Our buildings were like many of the buildings out there. We had some proprietary computer-based temperature control systems and a lot of pneumatic temperature control systems. And our leadership at the time, they were all raised in the pneumatic era, so DDC systems were seen as an expensive luxury that was often value engineered out of projects. And the control systems that we did have at the time were, facing obsolescence brought on by the internet boom. And so we found ourselves locked into kind of a corner where we weren't sure what to do. So after a change of leadership in 2003, we decided to abandon that old way of thinking, and we hosted an open house forum at our campus and invited in any controls vendor that wanted to come and showcase their new technology. And then we tested things like alarming, trending, scheduling, and web functionality. And after the results of that forum or open house, we rewrote our construction standards to implement the new technology that we saw. So what happened after that was really quite amazing. Soon, new controllers started showing up on campus. We had 8 BACnet devices on our network back in 2004. And steadily through the decade, that number grew to today we have over 900 IP-level BACnet devices on our system that's all integrated together. So the rest of the decade was spent working through integration challenges. And toward the end of the decade, in 2009, we hosted a Big Ten and Friends conference with our fellow Big Ten universities. And afterward, our engineering team was visiting with we were visiting internal about some of the conversations we had at the conference, and we realized that we had made it over that technical hurdle of getting things on the wire, and now our big challenge was, what do we do with that stuff? You know, we were all engineers that we hunger for challenge, and that data was simply eating up hard drives and largely being ignored by most people. So we wanted to do something more with it, start analyzing it, start looking at it, and you know, we were inspired by some of the things we saw with the genesis of the Panoptix product that Johnson came out with, and we started doing some of our own analytics in-house. And our experience is that there isn't really one catch-all solution for all buildings. We've certainly invested time where analytics had no measurable results. And we've also seen where careful analysis and subsequent actions have yielded as close to a 15% reduction in total utility spend. So with more than 220 buildings to choose from on our campus, we're not always sure which ones to focus on, and within those buildings, what systems we should focus on. So what's worked best for us is to get technology on the wire, get data, you know, reporting back to our data center so that we can analyze it. We do centralized scheduling, centralized alarm management, all from a single user interface. And you know, the story continues to the next chapter. So on behalf of the university, I'd like to thank you for inviting us here, and looking forward to the forum. So.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Charles Rick Steiner from Autodesk, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Hi, Charles Rick Steiner. I'm a business integration manager at Autodesk and working for corporate real estate and facilities. So you might ask what a building integration manager does, and we do a lot of work with the business, the folks that are out there developing software. And we use a lot of our buildings as living laboratories to trial out some new things, new methodologies, new approaches to technology and solutions. So as a software provider, we certainly have a passion for software and using software to solve problems and technical issues. And so we also have a good, deep passion for sustainability. And so across our portfolio, we've certainly worked on the design, the construction, and now more recently into operations on really bringing them to the standards that we can. And in moving into operations, starting to take a look at some of the tools that we use when we build buildings and some of the design analysis and energy modeling. With the data coming out of our buildings, we're able to now take a look and say, gee, are our tools working? Is the energy modeling accurate? Are we actually achieving some of our goals that we set out to design when we put forth these buildings? And one of our particular buildings I'm going to talk about was a project we started 4 years ago in Waltham, Massachusetts, which was our AEC headquarter building. And we set out to achieve the highest standards we could. We achieved a gold rating on the shell, platinum on the interior. And we're currently in the process of going after our existing building rating, which is our first in our portfolio of buildings. And we were surprised initially when we took occupancy of the building, saying, well, we've done everything we can. This must be green. To take a look and say, wow, it's not really achieving what it should be achieving. Where did we go wrong? And so by some of the data that we're able to take a look at with diagnostic tools and analytics that are out there today, we can certainly hone in and focus on what went wrong, you know, the human factor and some of the other things that happen in buildings, and really take corrective actions to bring those buildings back, and in particular in Waltham, into an optimized state. So we've been able to take some of the tools like Panoptix and really focus in on the analytics and the data that's coming out with good actionable data, because there certainly is a lot out there. And over the past 3 years that we've deployed Peterson and Panoptix and the tools, we've been able to trim out a 16% reduction in our consumption of resources. So we know that the tools work. We're certainly using them to refine some of the things that we're doing. And feel like we're just scratching the surface, because the technology is ever changing and it's sometimes a task to keep up with it. But there are some good things, and the tools are working really well out there now.
Great, thank you. And Mickey Rochelle from the town of Wake Forest.
Hello, Mickey Rochelle. Town of Wake Forest is in North Carolina. We currently have about 22 buildings. Up until 2010, we had no technology in our buildings. We built a LEED Platinum Town Hall, 44,000 square foot. But we found out by going back through our data that we're using more energy in this LEED Platinum than we did our previous 40-year-old town hall. Currently, we started using Panoptix along with a couple other methods of tracking data for our energy use and things of that nature. But our problem is we have 2 people in the department, me and 1 other helper. So we sort of consider PanOps as like an additional employee because helping us look at our faults, things of that nature, to try to commission our building, which we're currently trying to commission it due to the fact we didn't get our commission documents when we moved in. And I basically took the role over to look after the building in 2011, so I inherited this building. So now I've been on track trying to locate our faults, find out what's eating our energy up. And yes, it's an ongoing battle. And we talking earlier, I found out that although these guys are much larger scale than Town of Wake Forest, no matter what size of scale, we all have the same problems. We're fighting the same battles, trying to find the same issues.
Yep, great, thank you. Tom, I was wondering if you would comment on, you're right now in a new construction project and you're implementing integration of the various technologies in your building. When you started the project, what was your goal with that and how has that progressed over time?
When we started the project, I think there were several of us, nursing staff in particular, that really didn't understand how mobile we were going to be and how integrated we could be. I don't think any of us did. But as we continued through the process, it became more and more apparent that at least in the wave of the future, we would have a very, very mobile workforce, that we weren't going to be tied to desktops anymore. And so instead of the decision stream started to become, well, if we find the right device, I can use one device, have it with a nurse, and that replaces 3 fixed computers, or 4 fixed computers, or 6 fixed computers, depending on the unit. But what we quickly also found out was that the workflow, the applications that the nurses use are not there yet. They are not in a manner that we can easily use on mobile devices. So we have a facility that's getting ready to open in December, like I said, and we have created an environment where the adaptability of that will continue to feed, and it's become a real mixed bag. There is no clear answer today, but it's very obvious. I mean, everybody from my technicians maintaining the equipment to the nursing staff to the physicians are all going to want to use their own devices walking into our building. And while the system will support it, sometimes the applications won't.
So really interesting in terms of when you started designing the hospital, thinking about how to integrate technology, but because of the time lag from that concept to today, there's been a lot of changes in the technology, and that has implications in how you serve your patients.
Absolutely, and I think the goal quickly became, if I wasn't clear, the goal quickly became, how do we keep doors open now? How do we make sure we're not creating systems that won't be adaptable to that ever-changing technology, whatever it is? And I think the biggest thing that becomes is that every provider, every physician is going to walk in with their own device and expect their device to hook into our system, provide them with all of the information that they're required to make their judgment in terms of delivering of care. And if that doesn't sound like a HIPAA concern for our IT security folks, I mean, there is the big nut to crack. How do you maintain all of that accessibility and still maintain compliance?
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Charles, I was curious because you're in the software business and we hear all about social, mobile, analytics, cloud, and I asked you earlier, you know, what kind of response you got organizationally when you talked about starting to use some of your building management applications in the cloud. And if you could talk maybe a little bit about technology adoption and how you're able to, you know, get that to be an accepted concept in the organization, that would be great.
Yeah, well, it sounds easy, but in practice, it's a bit difficult. So there are growing pains when you're pushing the edge on technology, and we're certainly not without some of the things that we've had to go through some growing pains. But we certainly see the amount of a difference in the data that we're getting by this push to the cloud, and the amount of information that we can now leverage from sending the processing off of a desktop into something, you know, a collective solution like that. But we have mobile concerns. I mean, just a few years ago, we got into you know, the mobile market and started to use applications, and now we're starting to use them specifically to buildings operating. But they certainly, we need to be on the ground in the field, not so much tied to the desktop anymore. And so we need the tools really to work for us out there. And so you see kind of a change there. It's also coming along with a social change too. And whereas I can give an example of what we're starting to do in PanOptics now is we'll take a look at the data, but we can now take a look and a more proactive approach to how things are happening rather than the traditional reactive, and can take a look online with technicians now. So when a technician comes to the building, they already know some of the things that are wrong rather than having to go on a hunt to go find the issue. And so some of that proactiveness is really starting to translate into dollars now, where we can find things, don't spend so much time on some of these issues. And the fact that we can start to turn, you know, get dollar amounts out of these things now from software, so we can start to calculate return on investments on capital that we're putting into buildings, but we can also take a look at things that are happening in the building and react to that and know what the dollars are tied into that. So there's certainly some value in some of the features. But there seems to be these neat social components that are happening now where we're able to talk to you know, technicians in real time, take a look at real data, and solve the thing much more on the front half than we were waiting till something broke. So.
Great. And Mickey, I don't know if everyone was caught to the same degree I was, but 22 buildings and 2 people, right? And that you had LEED Platinum that actually ended up not performing to the degree that you expected. How do 2 people stay ahead of what's going on in 22 buildings and helping the occupants of those buildings stay comfortable and, you know, meeting all of the sustainability objectives that the town of Wake Forest has?
It's not easy. We're actually trying to upgrade our systems now because most of our buildings are over 20 years old. The only one we have newer than that is our town hall that we just built in 2010. So we rely a lot on the employees of other buildings to pass information along to us, and most of it's reactive instead of proactive. We are implementing a planned maintenance schedule for all buildings, which is fine, but then you still have to have people that can perform and get them completed. That's the reason we rely a lot on subcontractors at this point. We're really trying to get our technology in place so that, and new staff that we can do it in-house. I feel like it's more reliable to do it in-house. You have a better grasp on what's going on than you do relying on outside sources.
Great. Yeah, a big challenge. Mark, when you think about technology, I just know that over the years you guys have really sort of been on the forefront of considering how to apply new technology into your campus. How do you actually decide which technology is ready?
Well, that's a good question. I think, you know, having everything integrated, we wanted to make sure that the technology that we buy can be integrated so that people can work on it on their favorite system. So, you know, we deal with a lot of different controls vendors, and we want when we think about buying technology or installing technology in buildings, we want to make sure that it's integratable, that it speaks a common language. And a couple of examples of what we've done where that's useful is that we've been looking at equipment. Well, how should I say this? In Minnesota, it's cold in the wintertime, right? It gets down to 20 below zero at night, and during the summertime, it can get up to 95 degrees. And so, big span of temperature in our buildings, and we wanted to go out and look for any valves, dampers, VFDs, anything that was peaking at 100% when we weren't at design conditions. And so we wanted to be able to, you know, no matter what the technology is in the building, we wanted to be able to get that information up, and having it on a common platform, we can run a query like that and look for things that are not working at optimal conditions, you know, when we're in the comfortable temperature ranges of the year. So that was one way that we use technology.
And a follow-up question to that. So when you do deploy a new technology, how do you show back to your leaders, you know, that it delivered the return that you expected?
Yeah, well, we've done this in a couple buildings. We've installed new technology in buildings that we really didn't have any data for. There was old, obsolete technology, and so we installed this, you know, something new, and then we were getting results back, and we were showing that, boy, our bills are going are less, and they've dropped off significantly. And then we've taken that a step further, and we've applied continuous diagnostics to those buildings with a new technology. So step one is getting something new in the building that can provide data. Step two is then using that data, and we've shown further reductions in our utility bills. And so case studies like that, and we've done it in 3-4 buildings now, and we're set to deploy it in a couple more. And so we hope to have repeatable results. You know, being a research institution, we work with a lot of people who are scientific and don't believe anything but data. So we're going to have some more people do the same kind of testing that our group has done to see if they can get those same repeatable results, and I think they will. So
great. And Tom, when you considered your new building and deploying technology to not only improve the patient experience, but how did you go about evaluating what technology and how you would implement it within the building?
It wasn't, let's see, how do I phrase this one? It wasn't easy. If there are facility folks out there, I watch these guys down here and see if they smile when I say this. It is extremely difficult to get your technology team to participate in planning anything. And so it is always driven by the users. It is always driven by the workers, whether it's nursing, whether it's the physicians, whether it's my staff, biomedical engineering. It has to come from them. You try to understand what their workflow is, and you try to find the tools that will help support that. On the building automation side, this is just a tremendous opportunity for us because we've had 17 different buildings ranging. We still do patient care in a 1913 building on our existing campus. So you can imagine the Mark's got more buildings than I do, but I got a hunch it's the same kind of thing. There were all kinds of systems, all kinds of manufacturers, and never talked to each other. Very old systems. So the controls from that perspective are almost non-existent. And so we are looking extremely forward to having the opportunity to have current real-time controls that we can get information from and data. And then we'll have the struggle with our leaders because they'll expect, we have equipment that's much more efficient than our existing equipment, but we are now designed under new regulations that didn't exist in all of those buildings, and so we're moving much more air, we're using much more power, and the modeling shows that the bills aren't going to change a whole lot, and I know I will get the call. I'm wondering why that's the case.
Okay, we hope we can help you come up with a good answer. Mickey, so when the town built a LEED certified building, was there publicity around that? And how do you engage the community in terms of delivering the sustainability message and proliferating that message?
They were notified. They know exactly what we was up to, but the community, Wake Forest has pushed sustainability, go green. They've been pushing it, and finally we got some new leaders. They said, we're going to push our citizens, then we need to lead the way. So that's when we decided to go LEED. And when they decided on LEED, they said they want to go as high in LEED as they could. So we actually went for the platinum. And we thought we were there, and we actually got cut upon because we had Bermuda grass, which wasn't native. We had to go to buffalo. We said, no way. So we added PVs to our building also. So now we do net metering with our PVs. And the town sees it, town loves it. Now the town's beginning to get on board more with their recycling, things they do. Getting on board with the controlling the demand all through the town. We got commercial businesses that are putting in generators. The town's helping them get those in to help cut that peak demand.
Great. And Charles, when you reflect back over, I don't know, the last 5 or 10 years, is there a technology in particular that you think really changed the way that Autodesk looked at managing their property portfolio?
Well, I think a lot of it's tied into what we do as a core business, excuse me, is, with getting into building information modeling. You have such rich data sets that are within those models. And there's a gap really between when an architect and a contractor, and then at handoff, there's a lot of, and I dare to say, useless information that's handed off to an owner, 90% that'll sit into a file cabinet. And so really taking a look back at, how we can how do we close the gap? And how can we utilize the information, the modeling, get it to the owner? And a couple, besides the industry issues, an owner just doesn't talk the language of an architect or a contractor, and an architect and contractor don't necessarily understand what an owner is trying to do with his systems and measurement. And so I had an interesting conversation a few years ago when we were trying to tackle this thing and talk to architectural engineers who are trained to lay out the building in the most efficient way that they can. It's how they were trained. But that doesn't necessarily lend itself to the way an owner needs to take that data and then utilize it to measure his performance of his building. So right there, there's a little bit of a dissection there. Also with some of the ways that assets are classified in models, is a little bit confusing, so that, I know that some of the folks up here on the panel I was talking to, we don't necessarily get the information, those assets, into systems where an owner and operator in an automation system can use them in a clean way. So when I take a look back at the technology, I see the gains that we've made, but I see some of the opportunities that we have to really kind of close that gap. And I have a colleague of mine, Chuck Meese, who talks about begin with the end in mind. And really it's having those early interactions and conversations with your design team and your contractor and your architect to really talk through those issues and make sure you get it on the table so they have an understanding of where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do around the performance of your building. And I think then when you have those conversations, you get the best potential outcome for your project.
Great, thank you. I'll just open this up to any of you that want to answer this question, but when we think about new technology and introducing it within the building systems and how the buildings are managed, what's the impact on your staffs when you do that, and how do you address that?
Well, we are engaged in that struggle currently, trying to establish what our staff should look like when we move into the new building. My hospital is the county hospital in Marion County, Indianapolis, and we have a wonderfully faithful staff in my component. Many of them have been there 20+ years. So they don't necessarily have the skill set that it's going to be required for this new building that we're about to take ownership of. Trying real hard to understand how we deal with both of those things moving forward. We are expecting a challenge.
Well, as humans, we resist change, right? I was not the first one to buy an iPhone, but I do have one now. Probably many of you in the room do as well. And so we just see this now in our professional lives. Mark, do you want to comment? How do you bring your team along with new
Yeah, well, I think being at a university, we have a lot of smart people that we're surrounded by every day. Our engineering staff that we have is always hungering for new, latest and greatest technology. Like I said, we have a lot of buildings, and so we don't exactly know what to focus on all the time. And it seems like there's a competitive nature among our group to, discover some energy wasting phenomenon that's going on in a building that no one else ever saw. So if somebody can figure that out and find that, it creates a competitive nature between the other guy that is looking for the same thing. So having tools, new technologies that we can give those people, because tools are great and everything, but you have to have people to look at them, and they're what I consider list generators, right? Here's a list of problems, and so how do you filter that list and get people on board with that? And I think the new technology is able to focus that list a little bit more, so that if you don't have as many people around, they can go in and have a targeted approach at what they're looking at. So.
Right. Either of you want to comment?
I'll say from my standpoint, technology is great, but again, the only time it's helpful if we have time to actually look at the data, figure out what's going on. When you're short staffed, you actually need staff there to help dedicate time to this data, which it also helps out there, like here at this conference, I can go to the office, pull up my laptop, and sort of keep an eye on what's going back on in Wake Forest and call the guys and let them know what I'm seeing, because they're in the field. One guy, excuse me, not guys, I'm one of them. So he's there, he's trying to put out all the fires. So I can look at my data, I can look at my medicine system, notify him of anything going on. So that helps a little bit.
Great.
So I think at Autodesk, we don't have a shortage of people that want to jump in and solve problems. And I think we're kind of at a benefit there is we have people that want to solve the problem, want to be on the forefront, want to get involved in the bumps and the bruises and learning the technology. But we're trying to turn it a little bit back now. And so in Waltham, now that we've deployed the Panoptic system, and we've also looked at putting an outward-facing touchscreen interface with this data for the employees and the customers and folks that visit the building. Because we want to have a transparency of our operation. We want to be honest and say, here's what's really going on in the building. A lot of these folks that are in the building are the folks designing the software and very interested in the things that we're doing around modeling. So we're trying to put that back because we're convinced that this will drive better behavior with an awareness of the type of information that we can put in people's hands. So this is a fairly new thing we're embarking on in Waltham, but we're going to probably be looking at other buildings in portfolio because we want to put the information back into the employees' hands and gain their feedback too. So we feel that there's a lot to gain from the employee engagement.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking a lot about technology, but obviously it's not technology for technology's sake, but for delivering the organizational objectives that you have. When you guys think of your careers in the building space, and if you see the next generation of building managers or real estate portfolio managers, et cetera, coming out of school or starting on their careers, what advice do you give them?
Study. It's ever changing, the technology, so it can be a little bit overwhelming at first to delve in. So I encourage, and fortunately we have a lot of intern programs, so we get to see a lot of the folks that are in college and trying to work on some of their career paths. And we just like to get their feet wet and say, be part of the solution, jump right in. In the facilities world, I don't think there really is dumb questions. And we're just trying to educate around trying to keep up with the horse that's technology. So we certainly jump in.
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, at the University of Minnesota, there's no shortage of college labor that wants to come and work in our department. And so things that we do is we bring them in and we show them the new technology that we're using. The University of Minnesota tries to be on the cutting edge of technology all the time, trying new things. We're always open to doing experiments on some of our buildings. And so we engage our students. We get a lot of feedback from our students. They grew up with iPhones and the internet, where a lot of us did not. And so they have a really unique perspective on that. They just expect that stuff is there. And these are the people that we're graduating with, engineering degrees. And so they expect that technology to be there. And we're, trying to keep up on it and show them what we're doing with all the neat things that we have going on. And hopefully they go out into the marketplace and expand on that, so with their education.
And I'm not sure I need to say anything to them. Typically, I'd rather them talk to me because I'll get more ideas in that direction. That is a mindset to be open to that new workforce because, as Mark said, they've got an expectation that it's there. So my interest is to try and find out from them where this is going, because they'll have a better vision of it than I will.
Mm-hmm. Great, good point. Mickey?
Use your resources.
Yep.
Like the connected community, available Panoptics. If you have an issue you can't put your hand on, put it out there and others can comment back so you can talk to your peers and network. And I found that's some of the best learning you can do, studies, talk to your colleagues.
Great. So I'm going to go to questions in just a minute, so just to get you thinking if you have a question and get the folks ready to call them out from the online community. But before I do that, I just wanted to open it up to each of you. Was there any point that you wanted to make as you were preparing to come here that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Can't think of anything.
I can't either, sorry.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions in the room? We have 2 folks with microphones, so please wait for a microphone so those listening online will be able to hear the question.
Hi, this question is for Mickey. Has your perspective changed about the LEED process? And then secondly, how has Panoptics helped you bridge the gap between some of the inefficiencies that you've achieved through the LEED Platinum building?
It hasn't really changed. I see a lot of good in the LEED. I sometimes wonder about the cost up front, not seeing where our payback's going to come from with our building because it's not operating to the standards it was designed. And the Panoptics has helped me find some faults in our HVAC systems, things that were going on that I did not realize. We're slowly addressing those now. We're still working with another company commissioning our building. So I think once we get everything operating as it was designed, I'll have a lot more positive outlook on LEED. We still set our standards to whether we go for LEED certification or not. Any projects we do, we're going to do to LEED standards.
Other questions?
I have a couple of questions. One for Mr. Peterson and one for Mr. Ingham. Mr. Peterson, of the 3 or 4 projects that you already done, what kind of savings have you seen of energy? What % of energy savings have you seen?
I would say anywhere between 5 and 10% on the 3 or 4 buildings that we've done so far. So that's what we've done to date, and that's me looking at faults and directing people. And so we're going to turn that over to a couple other individuals to see if we get repeatable results. But that's what we're seeing today with paying attention to continuous diagnostics, keeping in touch with your buildings, responding to faults, and fixing those solutions.
Mr. Ingham, what PUE do you have in your present facility, and what is your expected PUE in the new facility?
I don't know the answer to that, frankly. I don't know. I'll find out.
Do we want to take a question from online?
Yes, we have a question online. This is for Charles. Charles mentioned that people and behaviors are part of the picture. How do other panelists view behavior as part of building efficiency?
Well, that's a tough one. How do we view behavior as part of building efficiency? Well, I think getting people involved with the technology, getting people to letting them know that they have an input. When I first came to the University of Minnesota, we had probably about 10 people that looked at the technology, and so it was very contained. And we actually expanded that over. We have over 350 Metasys users on our campus right now. So anybody that wants to look at it can. We have a real open culture where we will share data with anybody that wants to see it. So that transparency that you were talking about is very important. I think having it closed in and only a few people really creates a behavior that's not healthy for finding building problems. When you open it up and let people look at stuff, you start getting phone calls. And it might be a bow wave of activity at first, but eventually that planes out and you start to really focus on the problems that you're seeing. So I would say transparency is really important.
And I think at the core, people want to help and, sometimes need to be pointed in the right direction. But, we have things at Autodesk like green teams where people participate, come up with ideas, and it's kind of like a roundhouse for that type of thing. But most of the people I talk to want to get involved but don't know where, don't know how. And we think by giving them their information, I mean, they're intelligent folks, that they'll be able to come back with some interesting ideas or just comments that can help the equation. So we see it as, we as a community decision is putting it back there and say, guys, what do you think? And so, that's just expanding on that a little bit.
I think you need to train your people that's using your buildings. That's part of our problem, trying to find our energy problems. We have people that, until we explain to them exactly why we set parameters where we did for heating and cooling and stuff of that nature, you might walk by and they have little electric heaters stuck under the desk or fans in the corners. It's hard to figure out where your problems are and what's causing your issues if you can't get your people to follow suit with what you're trying to do.
Great. Tom, did you want to add anything?
No, I was just going to go a slightly different direction because I don't know that it's about building efficiency and my expectation of our new structure. My expectation is we'll have a lot friendlier patient experience, we'll have a lot better visitor and family experience, and we'll have a lot better staff experience because there will be flexibility in the systems that we never had before, and there'll be some some opportunities for direct user interface that they'll be able to do some adjustment themselves. The patient's going to be able to adjust at their bed what they want their temperature to be within a certain range, and those kinds of flexibilities just don't exist for us right now. So those will all be wonderful things for patient experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, a question here. Do you have a microphone? Oh, right here you go.
Two questions. Back to the lead. What was your expectation that hasn't been met yet?
As far as the lead building, the design, what they set our building out to cost us for energy, we found out that it's costing about double. So Ashley Rowe O'Donnell, which is our deputy town manager, he was the one on this project from the beginning, and he's still working with me up to this on set. So with the numbers he had from design and the numbers of what we're spending is way above and beyond. We found out our 40-some-year-old town hall was performing better than our lead building. So that's our biggest, everything else is working great, it's just on our energy side.
Thank you. And one more question. My impression today is that this is about appliances, air conditioning. Is anybody really working on the building envelope to get savings, retrofitting, deep energy retrofits?
Building envelope was clearly part of the design of a new building, but it's not a retrofit. Our whole campus, we are attempting to get to LEED Silver, and it's our belief that we'll be the first healthcare campus at LEED Silver if we gain that certification. I'm going to let Mickey come and help me out and make sure that it's not double the energy cost. That's kind of scary. So the whole envelope was obviously part of that, but it's not a retrofit.
I would say Town of Wake Forest has done minor things like windows, doors, stuff of that nature, trying to improve the envelope.
Was there another question?
Yeah. Question about, to the panelists, with larger chiller plants, is there any technology out there that you feel is lacking out there within the chiller plant efficiency standpoint? Or have you done retrofits within the chiller plants that have deemed a lot of energy savings?
It's not really the answer to your question, but with our new process, we took a totally different bent. We took the chiller plant out of our capital expense. We have a local utility that has a distributed system, so we gave them the opportunity to come to our campus, build the chiller boiler plant on our campus, allow them the flexibility with a future site to provide services to the surrounding university campus that's around us, and it took $26 million off my capital requirement by doing that.
One thing that we've done with our chiller plants is, chiller's job is to make cold water, right? Every building wants cold water. we've been using the technology to look at all of the air handlers, which are the users of the cold water, and make sure that they're running at optimum conditions. We look for valves, like I said, that are at 100% on a 60-degree day or 65-degree day. You know, we really study the air handlers and try to get at it at the air handler level, and that maximizes delta T back to the chiller, makes our chiller plants run better if our air handlers are working good.
Great. So it's about the whole building, the whole system. Question over here?
I don't know the specific way to answer that. It was a charge from day one to our design team. It was a charge to Johnson Controls as they came on as our integrator. You're making me want to go back and ask that specific question about what that influence really was. Because it has been hugely important to us as an organization because of our inability to predict what that technology is give us some open doors. And we were talking earlier at lunch about our whole project was built in BIM, everything about it. And I thought at the time we made the contract, it was very difficult to understand how to carry that forward as a tool. One of the things that we did, though, was we made the owner, us, the owner of the model. So we had control of that model as it went forward, because we couldn't predict what the future use of that was. I'm not sure that that model is going to be in a shape that I really can use it without additional expense. So, but even then, one of the charges was make sure that model is open enough that I can continue to use it for something that I can't see right now. You're going to make me go back and ask some questions.
Laura, we have several questions from our web audience. Charles, what are your thoughts on social networking trends, and especially community in the building efficiency space?
Social networking, something I fought hard. I still don't have Twitter or Facebook or any of those type of things, but they're becoming more important tools to our users. I mean, as we have more young folks come through the door, this is how they do their work every day. And so one of the things that we're incorporating into our dashboard that we're going to have out in the customer briefing and lobby area of the building are those social features. It's hooked up to Twitter. It's hooked up to building announcements and events. It has a community that can make commitments to different sustainability actions to take within the building. So we're certainly taking a look at how we can incorporate and engage the employees with that type of social interaction. I haven't used the social interaction features in PanOptix yet. But I do have folks in Waltham that are starting to use it, and they find it refreshing that they can get people at a moment's notice and have an impromptu conversation as if they were in the building having lunch. So those type of things I think are really impactful when it comes to adopting these type of technologies, is getting the help, but having that at the resources at your fingertips.
I might ask a follow-up question to that, because Mark, I think you were one of the early users of the social element of PanOptix. How did that influence the way that your team worked?
Well, we were slow to adopt it. People at first were like, well, I don't want to do that. You know, there was a general resistance at first, but so I kind of pioneered the effort of trying to get involved in networking with other folks at other facilities, and sharing those experiences back with some of those people that had that hesitation has really been cool, because I've started to get some more interest from people. You know, if I can share a story that, hey, I learned this from the guy that works at Miller Park. I don't remember his name, but he said something to me on the social media, and I shared that story with our team. And again, I was talking with someone in Abu Dhabi, actually, so that was interesting that someone on the other side of the world was asking me a question on the social media, and I brought that story again to our meeting and shared that with our group, and I've gotten a couple more people interested in it. So I think you have to have a couple early successes with that to get people more interested into it. And again, the aging demographic of some of our older facility people that are, you know, maybe a little bit shy about going on to some social media, but you know, the young people, like I said, they grew up with that, so they're going to expect it.
Is there another question from the online community?
We have many questions from our online community. This one is for everyone on our panel here live in Washington, D.C. The question is, you're making great progress in efficiency. What percentage of the way are you at on your journey?
I think it's an evolving journey. I don't know if you can actually nail down a percentage of...
Where's the end point?
Yeah, yeah. I think we're, you know, 0.1 there. So, yeah, each, you know, like I said, we were at a point to where we had very little technology in our building. We had hoses running around our building, controlling, you know, pneumatic things, and you know, we migrated forward to installing that first level of technology, and that faced obsolescence, and so now we've got, you know, web-based technology, and now we're starting to do analytics. You know, that just continues on and on. There'll be something new in 5 years that we're not even talking about or heard of here today. So,
anyone else want to comment on that one? Okay.
This question is for all of you. Do you have any thoughts on payback thresholds for a project to be implemented?
For Townway Forest, it depends on the size and scope of the project. Naturally, we want the quickest payback possible. If I present something that's got a long payback going out, say 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of times I get a lot of kickback. So now we're going to look for the quickest payback possible before a decision can be made.
our standard is 5 years.
We are capital poor now since we're building a new building, so if it was anything more than 2 or 3, I'd have a difficult time getting anything.
I think it's difficult to nail down at Autodesk because the nature of our portfolio is mostly leased space. So sometimes the term of the lease limits what we can do, and we either have to partner with the landlord or extend the lease and extend the runway. So that can be a bit of a difficult thing when it comes to some of the bigger projects. But what we try to do up front in our real estate negotiating is partner with those landlords who are passionate about those, who passionate about sustainability and understand the objectives we're trying to face, so we can address that up front rather than on the backside.
I'm going to take another question online because for those of you in the room, we're going to be here, but for those online, we're going to shut down in a couple of minutes. So is there another question online?
Yes, we have time for one more question. Charles, what types or sizes of buildings are best suited for building information modeling?
All sizes. Was that paid for by my? No, okay, so anyways, yeah. There certainly are the size of projects, which would call into question whether you'd want to do something sophisticated like modeling. But I've seen projects from all scopes and sizes benefit from the modeling, but also the energy analysis. I mean, these days you can do some pretty amazing things with models, even with some significantly insignificant inputs, such as photogrammetry and taking pictures and creating energy models. So reality capture has really introduced some pretty interesting things that benefit even the smallest projects these days. So I would venture to say it depends, but in a lot of cases, modeling benefits all size projects.
Great. Well, let me take this opportunity to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to all of those of you online around the world for joining, and most of all, thank you to our panelists for taking the time to come and share your lessons learned, the school of hard knocks sometimes, but we truly appreciate your participation. And I just want to draw your attention to the screen where you can see a website where you can get replays of this event, you can get case studies and other pertinent information. So that's all up and ready for you as soon as we conclude here. So thank you very much.